right. Hey, everyone. It's Nick and Ron by phone for this week's edition of Ask Ron. You guys are actually really lucky because I almost did not convince Ron to do it this week. He's on vacation. You're at the Biltmore, right? Or near the Biltmore?
I'm at the Biltmore in Asheville, North Carolina with Jay and Carol Joy and my friends Tom and Diane Futch.
All right. Well, they almost got Ask Nick this week because I was going to answer all the questions myself. I mean, after working with you for the past 13 years, Ron, I've picked up a few things.
You could have handled them.
If you want, we could play a little game. I could try answering them, and you could say if I was right or wrong. Okay.
Fine.
All right. First question we got is from Kirk in Florida. He says, "Hi, Ron. I decided to run separate marketing for both buyers and sellers. I have a serious buyer on the line, $50,000 down, and he realizes the monthly payment will be $2,200 to $2,500. And he states that he can cash out a balloon payoff in 5 years max. I've spoken with him a few times by phone, email, text. The buyer is also on board with doing some superficial rehabbing himself if it gets him into what he wants. He says he can do mid-January 2021. He goes on about some specifics, 3 to 4 bedroom pool.
All right, well, let's get to the question.
Yeah. He said, I know this deal is workable. I just need the knowledge to get it done. This is my very first deal and I need advice, maybe a little ego stroke as well. I'm very excited and a little scared. So my answer for Dan would be he's done the easiest part, which is, buyers are pretty easy to find, especially in this market and especially when you're offering terms. So I don't think he has to do separate marketing to find buyers until he actually has a house to sell. Because it's much easier to find a buyer for a house than a house for a buyer. So I think he's going to have to need to start looking for a seller. And just that's all of our typical ways of having VAs call FSBOs, sending them leads from the FSBO lead service on Gold Club. And then, of course, we've actually got your finding motivated sellers that you did.
All right. So you're telling me he doesn't have a seller yet?
No seller, just a buyer.
Just a buyer. Okay. Well, so to tell you the truth, if you haven't been trained yet, I mean, I don't know. We don't have anybody to help you until you get a mentor, and then that would be the one help you need. But honestly, you need the training more. So at the very least you should do is get my terms course, because that'll give you the tools you need to go try to find those sellers. But this buyer's not going to last too long before somebody else is going to scoop him up. So, Nick, he can't even get to the live boot camp till February. So terms is his only option as far as I can see. Can you see anything different?
Yep, terms for now. He could also call our course advisor. They could maybe get him into that finding motivated sellers course, so we can at least get some sellers coming his way. But if you don't know what to do with them, like you said, once you get them, that's going to be the issue.
Also, I should probably also call the office and talk to him about getting a mentor. I would allow you to get a mentor right now if you were to register for the December boot camp, and that would get you through this deal, because it scares me. It could easily cost you $50,000 if we don't get somebody to help you.
Okay, so that's good. Normally, you have to attend Quick Start first before getting a mentor,
or be registered for it.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, that'll work.
All right. Next, we got Dan from Florida. Dan's got quite a few questions here. I think we've been seeing a lot from Dan recently. In the lease option agreement with the seller, there is a blank to fill in for a monthly amount that the investor gets as a credit toward the purchase price. His first question is, should we attempt to have an amount equal to the entire monthly rent amount credited toward the purchase price each month? My answer would be sure, if you can get it. Just you want to make sure that you don't get into a situation where you owe them less than they owe on their loan. So you can't expect them to come up with a check at closing.
All right. I think what you just said was, if you're leasing it for the amount they owe, you cannot get a monthly credit, because they have no equity to give it to you from. If you're leasing it and you owe them much more than they owe underneath, I would not ask for the whole month's credit, to be honest with you, unless they got a lot of equity in between. Usually $200 or $300 a month is a really nice credit. Don't forget, you get the credit for the debt pay down as well if you structure the lease option agreement correct. So you get a double whammy. But don't get greedy, because it might cost you the deal.
All right. His next question on that is how much per month is typical to receive for a credit? And my answer there was
I just answered that.
yeah, I don't think there's a typical.
Yeah.
It's whatever you can negotiate and whatever makes
No.
sense for that particular deal.
No.
Okay. All right. His third question, is there any potential liability that could arise from having too high of a credit, which I think we've answered. For example, he's got an example here, $200,000 purchase price with a monthly credit of $1,000 for 5 years, 60 months, would drastically cut down the purchase price upon cashing out. The seller was told they were getting a delayed full price cash out. So they may not realize that that $200,000 they were expecting is now reduced to $140,000 because of one sentence in the contract, and try to litigate.
Well, it's up. Well, first of all, that $1,000 a month is too steep, like I just said. I mean, in my opinion. But the seller's got to be aware of it. You can't do these deals and not make the seller aware of them. That's called civil court. That's what that's called. So since you're going into the seller's house and getting a lease option agreement, you can't just hope they never find out about it. That's not the way you do business. So you point it out and you come to an agreeable number for that $1,000 a month. And it's clear to them that it comes off of their equity. But you need to quit worrying about that full price thing. Full price is what you and the seller agree upon. And you're not leaving until you and the seller agree upon it.
All right. Next question, is the option consideration money actually given to the seller upon the contract signing?
None. There's no reason for option. Well, unless the seller forces you to give them an option deposit. Usually we get nothing. They don't ask for nothing. We give them nothing. But if you, that's a deal. That's a deal. You have to give it to them when you sign a lease option agreement.
Okay.
It shouldn't be much.
Yeah, he said if yes, is it non-refundable if you fail to find a buyer? And if no, why does paragraph 1?
Of course it's non-refundable.
Right.
As it should be.
But it's only what, $10 or something? So
well, that's whatever the seller and you agree upon. Sometimes, for example, people are programmed to get a month's rent and a month's deposit. If they want a month's deposit, God bless them. That's what it's going to take to get the deal done.
All right. Let's see. Then he says, what is the best way to find out the HOA fees for a property? Is a monthly fee publicly available anywhere?
No, first you ask the seller and they'll know the answer. And you're not going to do a deal unless you get a copy of the association docs anyway, which is clearly in there. And you can always call the association yourself if you need to. But the seller's going to give you that information.
All right. Next question. When we get the option deposit from the tenant buyer for a lease option, the option deposit gets applied to the purchase price once the tenant buyer is ready to cash you out, correct? So yeah,
yes.
That's correct. If so, what is the purpose of the down payment assistance program? The tenant buyer will already have put down at least 5 or 10% from the option deposit. Okay. So the bank would be comfortable lending at this point already.
You want to answer
that? Yeah. It's just more money in your pocket sooner. So when you do a deal like this, you've got the front end option deposit. Then you've got the monthly spread between the rent and the monthly payment. And then you've got your back end profit. So the down payment assistance program is just a faster way to get that back end profit.
Yeah, well, on our point of view, and then on the other side's point of view, is they're literally paying toward their down payment, so they're paying into their equity. And sometimes the only reason they're not buying is because they don't have enough down, especially in those cases where it takes 20% down because you're above the FHA limit. So it's a service for them as long as they buy. Doesn't cost them anything unless they forfeit.
All right, and I think his final question, no, not his final, he's got quite a few. After getting a contract to buy a property subject to, which of the following items do you recommend that we have done before we close? And you list out a few: appraisal, home inspection, survey, and wood destroying organism report.
What's your recommendation?
None. If you're buying subject to, you're basically getting a house for free and you don't have to check any of those things. But what you do want to order ahead of time is a title search before you actually close. You'll need to get insurance on the property, of course, before you close. You should probably get a copy of the seller's note and mortgage from them. That's just their closing paperwork. If they have a survey when they close, then go ahead and get that. It'll be helpful for you. And you'll want to get a copy of their mortgage statement with their current loan balance and loan number. And last thing, probably just set up utilities before you close. That's it.
I couldn't have said it better.
All
You
right.
are paying attention.
All right.
All right.
And in addition to the title search, do you also have a municipal lien search done before closing?
Answer.
I would say the title search will show you everything you need to know.
The answer is no, unless it's in a war zone type area and you feel like you have a reason to do that. On the really low income properties, I'd say yes. On the rest of them, normal subdivision type houses that are in them, I don't know, the average price range for the area or even below, not really. I don't call them unless we see a reason to.
All right. So that was the end of his questions, Dan's questions finally. I do want to say I kind of cheated on that last one because I just used our Subjectto checklist that's on the Goal Club for what you need to do before you close a Subjectto deal. So
you didn't have to tell them that.
Well, they can do the same thing. They can cheat too.
Yeah. Okay. All right. But you'd have looked a lot smarter if you hadn't said that.
Well, I am smart because I use the resources I have available to me. So.
Okay. All right.
All right. Donald from Arizona says, when I purchase a property with my Roth IRA, can I put that property in a land trust owned by the Roth IRA, owned by my LLC? Or no, I'm sorry.
Well,
sorry, other way around. The Roth IRA owns the LLC. If not, what is
Correct.
the best practice to follow in this situation? Thanks for your response.
Okay. Well, the only word in there that I didn't like was put. Okay. When you take title to that property, it must be in that land trust that's owned by that LLC, that's owned by that IRA. You can't buy it and then stick it in there later.
Okay.
Other than that, that's correct.
All right. So yeah, land trust owns the property, LLC owns the land trust, and IRA owns the LLC.
Correct.
All right. Hector from Massachusetts says, I haven't heard Ron describe in detail about having the seller bring closing paperwork to the first meeting at the seller's house. I'm assuming this is for proof of ownership. And he references your script where you say,
it's not closing paperwork. We just asked the seller to get the papers they got when they closed the purchase of their house so we can look through them, see what we need.
Okay. It's kind of like some of the stuff we talked about. Like if there was a survey in there, then we could take that, the mortgage and note documents, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, take anything in there you want to take that you think will be useful to you, because most of the stuff they got will not. I don't care about all the disclosures and disclaimers that they got when they purchased the property. None of that applies to you. But as you said, things like termite bonds and surveys and escrow information from the bank are pretty important.
All right. Next questions are from Fernando. He says, when we do a cash deal, do we normally want to double close?
I don't know what you're talking about unless he's signing a contract on a cash deal and he's flipping it. And then you're not doing double close. You're doing a single close from your seller to your buyer, and you're getting checked in the middle. You don't need to do a double close unless you just do not want your buyer to know what you paid for the property. In that case, you got no choice but to do a double close. And even then, you better have a real good conversation about your closing agent. Make sure they keep their mouth shut and understand that that's not information that you want passed to your buyer. But that also means double closing costs.
All right. He says, I see several people using we on the seller closing calls. Do you see a difference in using the word I to get more of a sense of a small company?
I use I. And sometimes I use we, but I don't think that is going to be the determining factor. But I don't use a company name, I can tell you that. I just use I or we, but it sounds like individuals buying the house.
Yeah, I would just say we if you have partners. And some people like to say we as beginners because it gives them an easy out if they're faced with a question that they have trouble answering. They say, let me check with my partner on that. And of course,
I'd add to that,
go ahead.
Yeah, if you got a mentor, you want to use we. Your mentor might be pretending that you're your partner.
Right. Yeah. And the mentors, I think they were referencing some closing calls that they watched. So if they saw mentors doing closing calls, the mentors certainly say we because they're working with their students or you as their students.
Correct.
Next question. He says, I have a owner that is willing to provide seller financing. ARV is 200,000, PITI is 1,300, 25,000 to reinstate the loan and 2,000 to owner. I have usually requested owner to move out by closing date. If I allow them to stay, could it be difficult to remove them? Is eviction different from a tenant or?
Absolutely. So what's the ARV here again?
200.
And what do they owe?
They did not give that part.
Well, without that, I can't answer this question. And I can't even tell you whether it makes sense or not. I want to know what they owe before and after the 25,000. I mean, you've got to get one hell of a lot of equity in that property to put up $25,000. I can tell you that right now.
Yeah.
Or you don't do it.
I was thinking that to me, this doesn't really sound like a deal unless he does have a lot of equity, because he's got to come up with 27,000 plus closing costs just to buy the house. And if you're lease option this thing out, you get what, 20,000, maybe a little more.
Yeah. But what if they only owe 100 grand on it? Now all of a sudden it's a deal.
Yeah, exactly.
So we just don't know.
All right. But anyway, to answer his question though, if it were a deal and it was worth spending 30,000 to buy the house, and the seller won't leave at the agreed upon time, then what do you do?
I'm not going to buy the house until I know the seller's going to leave. And I'm certainly, you could. Let's say they tell you they'll leave a week after the stop foreclosure. Well, that's great, but they ain't getting that $2,000 till they're out of that house and they leave it clean. And there's a little simple agreement on the Gold Coast site just for that, when they stay in after you solve their problem. So you're holding that $2,000 till they're out. And there's a little statement there that says if they don't leave it clean, you're going to have it cleaned up and take it out of the $2,000.
Okay.
And then also, if they're not out by the date that's specified, then you're going to charge them X number of dollars a day if they hold it over.
All right. Next question. I am buying a property with seller financing. I plan to do some minor changes and sell with seller financing to my end buyer. The purchase and resale price spread is 30,000. I understand that sometimes it is wise to double close so end buyer does not see price I bought. However, the end buyer will eventually be able to see the city records. Should I try to increase my purchase price and ask the seller to provide a forgivable note?
No, I don't care what the buyer sees after I got their money. Does that sound like the deal to you?
Yeah.
Personally, in my case, I don't care what the buyer sees before I get their money. If they're afraid, if they don't like me making a profit, move on, go somewhere else. I'm not a nonprofit organization, so I don't try to keep stuff like that. I don't go tell the buyer what I just paid, but if they find out, tough. It's not going to stop them from buying, and if it does, maybe it should. So worrying too much about things like that.
Yeah.
They're getting what they wanted, they wouldn't be buying it.
Yep, that was my exact answer. I said it doesn't matter what you paid for it, or even if the buyer knows what you paid for it, probably won't show up on public record for quite some, a little while.
That's right.
Anyway, but don't worry about that kind of stuff.
Right.
All right. Stanley says, if purchasing the trust versus the property, are you still eligible for the depreciation of the property?
Yes. In fact, you own it in a trust has absolutely no tax consequences whatsoever.
All right. That brings us to the end of our questions this time around.
Okay. All right. Well, that's good. Here we are at Christmas time. So everybody, I think we got one more of these. Well, no, we don't. This will be the last one before Christmas moment. So have a Merry Christmas, and let's get to work and let's start making next year the best year of your life. Only you have that control.
We might be able to record one early next week to be released on Christmas, because Christmas comes on Weekly Report Friday. So.
Oh, it does. It does, doesn't it? All right.
So they might get one more Christmas present on that day.
All right. Okay. See you later.
All right. Thanks, Ron.